Hello, this is JC De Guzman. This is my June week 1 update for the 30 index stocks that I am monitoring for long-term investing purposes. So this video might take about 30 to 45 minutes or even longer, depending on the level of discussion that I'm going to present to you. Okay, so I will begin with Ayala Corporation. I'd like to remind you that I'm going to expand my chart maybe 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years um, or so. And that means the support and the resistance levels that you will see on my chart uh, might vary. It might vary because when you expand your chart depending on the uh, dates involved on the chart, it will also affect the support and resistance levels that you will see on the chart. So the more we stretch our chart back to the previous years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, or even more than that, we will be getting different support and resistance levels. But if we are going to zoom out our chart, and if we will only present 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months worth of data on our chart, we might be getting a different support and resistance level. Okay, so I have to mention that before I proceed in my technical analysis, so that you are not wondering why is that I am mentioning different numbers compared to what you are seeing on this long-term investing tab. Okay, I do hope I was able to make myself clear and set proper expectations in this video. So let's begin. So Ayala Corporation closed on Tuesday at 919 pesos per share. Support is at 835. Resistance is at 1117. That's the major resistance level based on this stretched out uh, chart that we have for Ayala Corporation. This last price is still moving above the 10 SMA and MACD is still moving above the signal line. Nonetheless, I am not yet seeing a perfect bullish alignment among the three simple moving averages of Ayala Corporation. We might be seeing a perfect bullish alignment once the price closes above 1,000 pesos per share. That's just an estimate, FYI. Now, um, let's take a look at the strength of the upward momentum. While the positive DMI is above the negative DMI, I am not yet seeing Ayala Corporation moving inside the very strong upward momentum level or category. It's not yet there. So again, I think we will only be seeing a strong upward momentum uh, for Ayala Corporation as measured by the average directional index line or the ADX line, probably once the price breaks above the 1,000 pesos per share level. Okay, now let me show you the stance or the sentiment of the foreign investors for 2019 year to date. So they are bearish on Ayala Corporation for 2019 year to date. But there's something that I need to note here, that foreign investors registered a 4-day straight net foreign buying from May 29 up to June 3rd. So last Tuesday they registered a net foreign selling worth 22 million pesos. So I remain bullish on Ayala Corporation in the short term, but since the price, on the daily chart, this is a daily chart, okay, not a weekly or not a monthly chart. On the daily chart, I am bullish on Ayala Corporation in the short term, and I can only maintain my bullish uh, rating on the long term on the daily chart. It's important to note what kind of chart are we looking at. I can only maintain my bullish sentiment for long term on Ayala Corporation once the price uh, recovers its position above the 930 pesos per share level. Okay, so let me just also emphasize this, that um, we might be getting a different sentiment depending on the kind of chart that we're looking at. If I will be switching to the weekly chart, let me just show you that. If I will be if now that I've switched to the weekly chart, my my sentiment for my long-term rating for Ayala Corporation suddenly becomes bullish, simply because on the weekly chart the last candlestick is already moving above the 200-day simple moving average on the weekly chart. I think we will also get a bullish long-term rating for Ayala Corporation on the monthly chart. Let's see. Yes, it's also bullish in the long term on the monthly chart. Okay, but on the daily chart it's bearish in the long term on the daily chart. Okay, so there you go. For Ayala Corporation, um, for as long as the price is not breaking below 900 pesos per share, I find it still attractive uh, to continue topping up or even to enter a new position for long-term purposes on Ayala Corporation. Okay? And by the way, just as how I set expectations whenever I record my top 5 gainers and top 5 losers analysis video for short-term trading purposes, I'd also like to emphasize that in this video, everything that I'll be speaking about or talking about is geared towards long-term investing. If you're looking for pieces of advice for short-term trading for these index stocks, you have to ask in our private clients forum, or you should refer to the short-term trading tab. All right. So lastly, for the RSI on the daily chart again, our Ayala Corporation's RSI is still quite distant from its classical overbought level. So there's still more room for Ayala Corporation to uh, make some attempts to, you know, continue going continue moving towards the northward direction. All right. Next we have Aboitiz Equity Ventures, or AEV. The last price is still moving above the 10 SMA, and MACD is still moving above the signal line. Okay, so that's a bullish pair already. 10 SMA and MACD combo. On the daily chart, I am not yet seeing a perfect bullish alignment of the SMAs. Nonetheless, um, I remain bullish on AEV both in the short term and long term in the on the daily chart. Let's check the weekly chart. On the weekly chart, AEV is already bearish in the short term. In the long term rather, but on the monthly chart, AEV maintains its bullish rating in the long term. Okay, I repeat, on the weekly it's bearish in the long term, on monthly it's bullish in the long term, on daily it's also bullish in the long term. Okay, now back to the daily chart. I am seeing a strong upward momentum level for AEV on the daily chart based on my readings on its DMI and ADX histogram. RSI wise, there's still more room for AEV to uh, also make some attempts to inch closer to its resistance level. By the way, support level is at 46.55 while resistance is at 61 pesos per share. Once it breaks above 61, the next resistance level would be near 67.8. I am bullish on AEV in both in the short term and long term based on the daily chart. Foreign investors, they are bearish on AEV for 2019 year to date. Okay, next, AGI. AGI's last candlestick is still moving above the 10 SMA and also above the 200-day SMA on the daily chart. Let's see the weekly chart. So it's also bullish both in the short term and long term scale in the weekly or on the weekly chart. Now on the monthly chart, AGI maintains its bullish stance both in the short term and long term also. Okay. Going back to the daily chart, um, the positive DMI is also still moving above the negative DMI. However, the upward momentum has not touched the very strong category yet when it comes to the upward momentum. Okay, I think my estimate tells me that AGI will only enter the strong upward momentum category once the price breaks above the resistance at 16.4. Yes, that's the resistance level. Support is near 13.30. Okay, now there's okay, let me change this one. Resistance is at 17.2. If it breaks out above 17.2, that will make 20.30 or 20.40 as its next resistance level. Okay, support is at 13.30. So I am bullish on AGI both in the short term and long term scale on the daily chart. You still have a data driven reason to hold your position, to top up, or to enter a new position. For the dominant range, just refer to our long-term investing tab. Okay, the trade and volume distribution numbers together with the volume weighted average price are mentioned on the long-term investing tab. Okay, I'll move to the next stock, Ayala Land. Ayala Land's last candlestick is bullish in the short term and long term on the daily chart. On the weekly, Ayala Land is still bullish both in the short term and long term scales. On the monthly, it's the same, bullish both in both time horizon, short term and long term. Now let's go back to the daily chart. On the daily chart, support level is at 49.5. Resistance, the psychological resistance, is at 61.3. That's aligned to the 61.8% up Fibonacci extension. However, if Ayala Land will break below the support level at 49.5, that will make 44.85 as its next support level. MACD is still moving above the signal line, and the upward momentum remains in the strong category. RSI already hit it almost hit its classical overbought level last Monday when the price hit an intraday high of 59.5. So now RSI is at 61%. So there's still about 20%. It's still 20% away, 20% away from the classical overbought level. Okay, so if you have had Ayala Land, or if you are planning to enter a new position, you still have a data-driven reason to either hold your position, to top up, or to enter um, a new position on Ayala Land for long-term investing. Okay, next we have Aboitiz Power. So AP's last candlestick is unluckily it's now moving below the 10 SMA last Tuesday, but still above the 200-day SMA. So while I am bearish on AP in the short term on the daily chart, I'm still bullish on it in the long term, again on the daily chart. Switching to the weekly chart. On the weekly chart, I am bearish in the long term, but still bullish in the short term. Now on the monthly, I am bearish on the long term, but still bullish in the short term. So switching back to the daily chart. On the daily chart, I can see here that um, AP might just continue to move sideways inside the support and resistance levels, 33.75 and 39.25 respectively. So MACD is still moving above the signal line, however. Okay, so RSI is also moving sideways. Um, it's at the midpoint between the classical overbought and oversold levels. So there's still more room for AP to, either to just move up and down and just to trade the range between 33.75 and 39.25. Foreign investors are, let's see, for 2019 year to date. It's a mixed sentiment for the foreign investors. They are also sideways. They are lukewarm, so to speak, on Aboitiz Power. So I would say they are neutral on AP. So there you go. Next, oh, by the way, my recommendation for AP, if you have AP, I would suggest that you hold your position for now. And if you don't have AP, I suggest that you monitor the stock for now. Okay, don't enter a new position yet. The price might just continue to move lower or move below the 10 SMA. Just like what I always tell you whenever I record my video for short-term trading, I suggest that you only consider doing a test buy or entering a new position once those 4 points that we always check are all present. And what are those 4 points? The last candlestick should be green. It should be above the VWAP. We should be seeing a green volume bar that is uh, at least higher than the 50% of the stock's 10-day volume average. And lastly, the dominant range should be closer to the intraday high than the intraday low. Alright, so next we have BDO. BDO's last candlestick on the daily chart is moving above the 10 SMA and 200-day SMA. Therefore, I am bullish on BDO um, in the short term and long term scales on the daily chart. Switching to the weekly chart, I remain bullish on BDO on both time horizons, short term and long term. On the monthly chart, I remain bullish on both horizons. Going back to the daily chart, MACD is still moving above the signal line. RSI is still distant from the classical overbought level, and the situation is being controlled by the bulls. Nonetheless, the upward momentum is still uh, not inside the strong category. We might be seeing a strong upward momentum for BDO once the price breaks above the resistance at 141. Support is at 124. Okay, so I am bullish on BDO. Um, you have a data-driven reason to hold your position, to top up, or to enter a new position on BDO for the long term. Okay, next. Oh, by the way, foreign investors sentiment. Foreign investors are, what do you think? And they are bearish. They are net sellers for BDO in 2019 for 2019 year to date. Okay, next. We have what's next after BDO? We have Bloom. Okay, Bloom's last candlestick is still moving above the 10 SMA and the 200-day SMA on the daily chart. So I am bullish in the short term and long term scales on the daily. On the weekly chart, I remain bullish in the long term and short term. On the monthly, I also remain bullish both in the short term and long term scale. So switching back to the daily chart, MACD is still moving above the signal line. RSI is still also distant, uh, quite far from the classical overbought level. While the situation is in favor of the buyers, the upward momentum is still far from a confirmed strong upward momentum. And I think it will only get that confirmation of having a strong upward momentum once the price breaks above the resistance at 13 pesos per share. Support is at 11 pesos. Okay, so you still have a data-driven reason also to either to hold your position, to top up, or to enter a new position on Bloom. Next, BPI. Oh, by the way, foreign investors sentiment for Bloom. Foreign investors are still bearish. They are still net sellers for 2019 year to date on Bloom. Okay, let's move on to BPI. BPI's last candlestick is already moving below the 10 SMA and the 200-day SMA on the daily chart. That's a bearish signal. It's the same thing on the weekly. How about on the monthly? Let's see. On the monthly, it's bearish in the short term, but still bullish in the long term on the monthly chart. But on the daily and weekly, it's both bearish. It's bearish both on in the short term and long term scales. So overall, BPI got a bearish sentiment. I have a bearish sentiment on BPI both in the short term and long term scale. As you can see on the DMI histogram, the red line is above the green line, therefore, and this situation is still being controlled by the sellers, although the downward momentum is still far from getting that confirmed strong downward momentum category. And my estimate tells me that BPI will get a strong downward momentum level if and when the price breaks below 77 pesos, 77.2. MACD is still above the signal line. Okay, it's already moving above the signal line, but once BPI registers another red candlestick, I think this MACD will register a downward sloping line. Foreign investors are bearish on BPI for 2019 year to date. So, my advice, don't enter a new position on BPI yet. I am bearish on BPI. Okay, next, DMC. DMC DMC's last candlestick on the daily chart is moving below the 200-day and the 10-day simple moving averages. That's a bearish signal on the short term, and I suspect it's the same thing for the weekly chart. On the weekly chart, let's confirm. Yes, I am right. On the monthly, let's see. Okay, on the monthly, it's bearish in the short term but still bullish in the long term, just like BPI. But since we got um, an overall bearish sentiment for DMC both in the both on the daily and weekly chart, that makes my overall sentiment bearish for DMI. Okay, but on the daily, going back to the daily chart, MACD is still moving above the signal line, but the price or the last candlestick is already below below the 10 SMA. On the daily chart also, the situation is already being controlled by the bears, and I think once the price draws closer, maybe once the price drops below 10 pesos per share, that will um, make DMC earn a strong downward momentum category. So I suggest not to enter a new position on DMC yet. Don't top up as well. Okay. Next, we have FGen. FGen's last candlestick is above the 10 SMA and the 200-day SMA on the daily chart. That's a bullish uh, signal. On the weekly chart, let's see. I am also bullish on FGen on the weekly. How about on the monthly? I remain bullish on FGen even on the monthly chart. Switching back to the daily chart, MACD is still moving above the 10 SMA, and the buyers are in control of the situation. RSI is still quite distant from the classical overbought level. Foreign investors have been consistently registering a daily net foreign buying for how many days? For 5 straight trading days already. Last Tuesday, they registered a net foreign buying worth 44 million pesos. For 2019 year to date, they are net buyers. They are bullish on FGen for 2019 year to date. So you also have a data-driven reason either to hold your position, to top up, or to enter a new position. Next, Globe, a telecom company. Globe's last candlestick on the daily chart is bullish in the short term and long term scale, and my estimate tells me that it's the same sentiment on the weekly, and I am right. On the monthly, I think it's also bullish, and it is. Going back to the daily chart, MACD has been bullishly moving above the signal line since the first week of May, and the upward momentum is very strong. It's in a strong category already. Um, just a reminder though that RSI is already um, tiptoeing towards the classical overbought level. So nonetheless, it's nothing that we should be worried about because we have a trailing stop loss system here. Okay, trailing stop loss. We can take advantage of the upward momentum of the stock, and we can still lock our profits because we have a trailing stop loss. Okay, if this is the first time that you have heard the phrase trailing stop loss, because it's only today that you have subscribed please refer to the quick start guide so you will understand what a trailing stop loss is, how to compute it, when to make an upward adjustment, why there should be no downward adjustment, etc., etc. It's all in the quick start guide. If it's not there, or if there's something that you don't quite understand, please ask inside our private clients forum. Ask by all means. That's the reason why I created the private clients forum, so you can ask. Okay. um, Foreign investors, wow, this is, it looks solid. Their buying appetite on Globe looks pretty solid. They have been hoarding, should I use that word, should I use that gerund, they have been accumulating a significant amount of shares of Globe since the last week of April. And last Tuesday, they registered a net foreign buying worth 159 or 160 million pesos. And if I remember it correctly, it's the exact opposite sentiment of the foreign investors on PLDT last Tuesday. I think they sold about 430 million pesos. No, they did not sell 430, but they registered a net foreign selling worth 430-ish million pesos. So they are switching, I think, they are switching to Globe. Okay, so foreign investors for 2019 year to date are bullish on Globe, and their bullishness started to become a dominant sentiment since the last week of April this year. Okay, so you also have a data-driven reason to hold your position, to top up, or to enter a new position on Globe. Okay, next. GT Cap. Okay, GT Cap. GT Cap's last candlestick on the daily chart, it's already moving. You can see it on your screen. It's already moving below the 10 SMA and the 200-day SMA. Therefore, I am bearish in the short-term and long-term scale on the daily chart. How about on the weekly? I'm also bearish on GT Cap on the weekly chart, both in the short-term and long-term scales. Now, on the monthly chart, it's the same thing. I'm also bearish on GT Cap, both in the long-term and short-term scales. So MACD is already downward sloping, even if it's still above the signal line. On the DMI, I'm seeing a formation of a bearish convergence between the positive and the negative DMI. So that signals a change of sentiment, a formation of a changing sentiment for GT Cap. RSI is in the neutral level. My overall sentiment for GT Cap is bearish. Okay, bearish. Now, foreign investors for 2019 year to date are also bearish on GT Cap. So, if you are planning to enter a new position on GT Cap, postpone that plan. Okay, just do that once all 4 points, once the 4-point criteria that we are monitoring have become present on GT Cap, not now. Okay, next we have ICT. ICT's last candlestick is apparently it's still moving above the 200-day SMA and the 10 SMA, so that's bullish in the short-term and long-term scales on the daily chart. On the weekly chart, it's also bullish in both the time scales. On the monthly, bullish also on both the time scales. Now, MACD, unfortunately, on the daily chart is still moving below the signal line, and I don't see a formation of a bullish convergence between the MACD and the signal lines. Okay, so here On a DMI histogram, I think, yeah, on the DMI histogram, ICT is starting to show some signs of a possibility to just move sideways. Okay, it's showing some signs that it might just start to move sideways from here between the support and resistance level. Support is at 113.30, resistance is at 142.5. So foreign investors are net buyers for 2019 year to date. They have lain low since the second week or third week of May. Okay, I think they wanted to relax a bit on ICT. So my overall sentiment, here's my advice. If you have had ICT, if you have had ICT, I suggest that you hold your position for now. And if you are planning to enter a new position, I suggest not to do that yet. Not to do that yet. Um, I also suggest, this is for long-term investing. I suggest that you wait for the 10 SMA and MACD combo to become true. Wait for it to become true. Do not preempt the 10 SMA and MACD combo in this case for ICT's case. Okay? Alright. Next. JFC. Okay, what has been happening to the B? Okay, Jollibee. So Jollibee's last candlestick is already moving below the 10 SMA and the 200-day SMA on the daily chart, and that makes a JFC bearish on the daily. Now on the weekly, it's bearish in the short term but maintains its bullishness in the long term on the weekly. Now on the monthly, it's the same thing, bullish on the long term, bearish in the short term. So here's my overall sentiment. I am bearish in the short term but still bullish in the long term. Nonetheless, on the daily chart, sellers are still in control and the downward momentum is super close to having a strong downward momentum, but it's not yet there. Um, it can get there once the price, let me make an estimate here, once the price breaks below 270. Okay, so support level is at 242.30, resistance is at 305. Okay, 305.11 or 305 pesos per share. Foreign investors are net sellers on JFC for 2019 year to date. They started to sell heavily on JFC in the last week, since the last week of April. Without, they almost registered a consistent net foreign selling if this net foreign buying last May 30 did not happen. Okay, so they are net sellers for 2019 year to date. So my suggestion is that don't top up yet. Hold your position if the price is still moving above your trailing stop loss. And if you are planning to enter a new position, no, not yet. Not yet. Wait for the 10 SMA and MACD combo to become true and wait for those 4 points to become perfectly present before you enter a new position on Jollibee. Okay, next. Where are we? We're not yet halfway done. Okay, JGS. This is going to be a pretty long discussion. 30 stocks. What do you expect? Okay. So I might be speaking here for about an hour or so. Good luck. So JGS. JGS's last candlestick is moving above the 10 SMA and the 200-day SMA, therefore I'm bullish in the short-term and long-term scale on the daily chart. Now on the weekly, I am bearish already on JGS on the weekly. On the monthly, I'm still bullish on JGS. Therefore, my overall sentiment is bullish on JGS. Now, switching back to the daily chart, buyers are still, they seem to be in control on the daily chart. And RSI is close to its neutral level, giving more room for JGS to zig and zag towards the resistance level at 60. Let's make 70 pesos per share. Support is at 42. Okay. All right. So you have a data-driven reason to top up, to hold your position if you don't want to top up, and to enter a new one also. Okay, next, LTG. I am bearish on LTG in the short term and long term scales on the daily chart. Now on the weekly, I am bearish. On the monthly, I am bearish in the short term but still bullish on the long term, or in the long term on the monthly chart. Now going back to the daily chart, MACD is already moving below the signal line, signaling a bearish sentiment for LTG. Sellers are in control based on DMI's histogram on the daily chart, and RSI is closer to the classical oversold level than the overbought level. Support is at 12.8, resistance is at 17.4. Let me make an estimate here. Let's see if LTG will respect this midterm support near 14.6. If it breaks below 14.6, that midterm support, it will be more likely for this stock to retest the support level near 12.80. Okay, foreign investors are net sellers on LTG for 2019 year to date. So I suggest not to enter a new position yet on LTG. Do not. Let me go back to the DMI. There's a possibility for LTG to just move sideways, maybe between 14.6 to 17.4. It might just move sideways within that range based on what I see on the DMI's histogram. So don't enter a new position yet, and if you already have this one in your portfolio, don't top up yet. Hold your position, sell once your trailing stop loss is hit. Next, MBT. Okay, we are now on the first on. This is not the first banking stock that I discussed. We already discussed BPI. Okay, MBT. MBT is bearish in the short term and long term on the daily chart. On the weekly, it's also bearish. On the monthly, it's bearish on the in the short term but bullish in the long term on the monthly chart. Going back to the daily chart, MACD is already downward sloping, and there's already formation of a bearish convergence between the positive and the negative DMI. It signals a change of sentiment from bullish to bearish in the short term. Foreign investors are net sellers on MBT for 2019 year to date. Their appetite to sell intensified starting the second week of April. So don't enter a new position on MBT, and if you have this one, don't top up. Just hold your position if it's still moving above your trailing stop loss. Okay, next. After MBT, we have Mega World. Okay, Mega World. Let me. Okay, Mega World is bullish in the short-term and long-term scales on the daily chart. On the weekly, it's the same, bullish also. On the monthly, same thing, it's also bullish on the monthly. Going back to the daily chart, MACD is bullish. It's in buyers are in control. They are clearly in control. And once the price, let me just zoom this in. So once the price um, continues to, maybe once it touches 6.5 or 6.3, we might get a confirmed strong upward momentum level for Mega World. And by the way, support is at 5.86 and resistance is at 7.10 or 7.08. It is in confluence with the 61.8% of the up Fibonacci extension. Foreign investors are net buyers on Mega World for 2019 year to date. They have started to accumulate Mega World on the positive side uh, since May 30, and they have been uh, on a daily net foreign buying mode for 4 straight trading days since May 30th. Okay, so you you have a data driven reason to top up and to enter a new position on Mega World. Okay, next, Meralco. Okay, hold on. Meralco. Okay, Meralco. Meralco is bullish in the short term and long term scale on the daily chart. Now on the weekly, it's also bullish, both in the short term and long term. On the monthly chart, it's also bullish. Wow. So going back to the daily chart, MACD affirms the bullishness of Meralco on the daily. Now on the DMI's histogram, buyers are in control, but the upward momentum is still not in a very strong category. Support is at 340. Support is at 350. Resistance is at 400. Um, Once the price breaks above 400, I'm my estimate tells me that we will be seeing a confirmed strong upward momentum for Meralco. Okay. Now, where is the psychological resistance once the price breaks above 400? Okay, I have the answer to that. Let me zoom this in. So there you go. 61.8% of the up Fibonacci extension is positioned near 485. That will be your psychological resistance once the price breaks above 400 pesos per share. Right. So let's see the sentiment of the foreign investors. They are, what do you think? Are they net buyers or they are net sellers? I think they still have a neutral sentiment because in the past few months of this year, they were also they also registered some significant net foreign selling days. And if foreign investors did not register uh, uh, a pretty strong net foreign buying days in the last week of May, maybe I would say that it's a net foreign selling for 2019 year to date. But because of that return of their buying appetite, because of the return of their buying appetite on Meralco, I would say that I am seeing a neutral sentiment among them for 2019 year to date. But if this uh, buying sentiment will continue this June, then I think it will become a bullish sentiment among foreign investors for Meralco for 2019 year to date. If only this will be followed up, be followed through. Okay. Nonetheless, you still have a data-driven reason to top up and to enter a new position on Meralco. Next, MPI. MPI is bullish in the short term on the daily chart, but bearish in the long term on the daily chart. On the weekly, it's the same thing, same as the daily. For in the monthly chart, or yeah, in the monthly chart, it's bearish both in the short term and long term scales, but that's on the monthly chart. Now going back to the daily chart, buyers are still in control, and I think the upward momentum remains strong despite this red candlestick last Tuesday. MACD still moving above the signal line. I do not see, I repeat, I do not see a downward sloping MACD for MPI despite that red candlestick last Tuesday. RSI is still far from the classical overbought level. In fact, it looks like it's more neutral. Okay, so you have a data-driven reason to top up and to enter a new position on MPI still in the short term. But let me just repeat that I am bearish on MPI in the long term, and support is at 4.14, resistance is at 5.54. Foreign investors are net sellers on MPI for 2019 year to date, and they aggressively started their net foreign selling days on MPI uh, since the third week of March. Well, let's see this June, because they have already registered three consecutive trading days of three consecutive net foreign buying days. And last Tuesday, despite that red candlestick, they registered 28 million pesos worth of net foreign buying. But for the entire year, they are still net sellers on MPI. Next, we have Pure Gold. Okay, Pure Gold is bearish in the short term and long term scales on the daily chart. Now on the weekly, it's bearish in the short term but still bullish in the long term. Now on the monthly chart, it's bullish both in the short term and long term scale. Okay. Now switching back to the daily chart, MACD is already moving below the signal line, but I think it is poised to recover its lost ground above the 10 SMA. Well, let's see. Let's see in the coming days if it will recover or if it will register a golden cross above the signal line. But before that happens, I would prefer to see Pure Gold moving above, at least above 45, above 45.8, 45.5 to 45.8, for it to gather enough upward momentum to recover its position above the signal line on the MACDs. In fact, on the daily chart, uh, sellers are still in control. Okay, and fortunately, RSI is in the neutral level. So, so again, if the price uh, can make it again back to the 45.5 to 45.8 level, I think that will propel Pure Gold to move closer to the resistance near 49.8. So by the way, support is near 40.14. Okay, this is a long-term. Uh, this is a long-term view. That's why it's quite distant, the support and resistance level. So I am expanding, or yeah, I'm stretching my chart uh, from 2019 all the way to uh, 2015 or 2016. That's how I got that support and resistance level here. Okay, because if we will only limit the chart from for the past 2 to 3 months, we will be getting a different support and resistance level. It will be quite steeper or quite compact, but because we are stretching our chart for years worth of data, uh, the support and resistance levels are quite distant from each other compared to how close they are when the time scale is just months worth of data. Okay, now pure gold. So my recommendation for you for pure gold is, if you have this is in your portfolio, hold your position, don't top up yet. Don't top up yet. Okay, this is a normal behavior of pure gold. If you have been trading for a while, you know that of all the index stocks, pure gold is the one that's uh, there are many moments in the trading life or trading career of pure gold that um, it's moving sideways most of the times. Okay? It's very rare that it would register a relatively or a pretty steady upward or downward direction. Most often, it just moves sideways. So this is a normal behavior of pure gold. So in other words, it's quite boring to do long-term investing on pure gold compared to the other index stocks. Okay, next. Okay, RLC. We're down to how many stocks? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we're almost done. Getting there. RLC. RLC is bullish in the short-term and long-term scale on the daily chart. And by the looks of its previous price action, it would be the same on the weekly and the monthly. But let me just double check. So yes, my assumptions were right. It's bullish in the short term and long term scales on the daily, weekly, and monthly charts. So what do we expect? Of course, MACD would still be bullish. Alright, excuse me. RSI is excuse me. It's still quite distant from the classical overbought level. Yeah, there's still more room though for it to wiggle back to its previous high at 27.4 or even higher. So on the DMI chart, on the DMI histogram, the upward momentum is almost close to its confirmed strong upward momentum level. Okay, foreign investors are, let's see, for 2019 year to date, they remain net buyers for RLC. Now, support is at 26.15 for the resistance. Resistance is at 32.30. It's historical resistance, not a psychological one yet. Okay, I repeat, support is at 26.15, resistance is at 32.30. It just broke above its previous resistance level a few days ago. Okay, so With this analysis, you have a data-driven reason to top up and to enter a new position on RLC. Okay, next we have RRHI. Okay, RRHI is, well, technically it's bullish on the short term on the daily chart, but still bearish on the long term on the daily chart. Let's see if we will see the same thing on the weekly. Well, on the weekly, it's both bearish in the short term and long term scales. And I think it's the same on the monthly. And yes, it is. Okay, how about the foreign investors? Are they also bearish for 2019 year to date? Yes, they are. Oh, here you go. The downward momentum is very strong on RRHI based on the DMI histogram. It's still very strong. So there's still a high risk. There's still a high probability for RRHI to revisit its previous support or its current support. There's still a probability for RRHI to draw closer. That's what I'm trying to say. To draw closer to its support level at 68.6. And the major resistance, if we are to stretch the chart, 3 years back, its major resistance would be at 90 pesos per share, as we can see here. Okay, now the good side of this is that by doing the arithmetic, you will get a thicker potential reward than the potential risk, because the price is closer to the support than the resistance level. But it doesn't mean that you should already enter a new position on RRHI. I suggest the otherwise. Be on a sideways, stay on the sidelines for now. Don't top up. Okay, don't top up. And I suggest, and I think by now I should not be advising you not to top up, because your trailing stop loss must have already been hit on RRHI a few weeks or even last month. So if you're planning to enter a new trade or a new position on RRHI, postpone that plan. Okay, we have no confirmed. I suggest you wait for the 4-point criteria to become present. Okay, to become present. Yes, the price is still moving above the 10 SMA and MACD is still moving above the signal line, but you want to have a high conviction call uh, before you enter a new position in RRHI. And how would you get uh, a high conviction call on RRHI? How will you get another confirmation that it's really logical to enter a new position in RRHI, aside from seeing the conditions of our 10 SMA and MACD combo being satisfied? Of course, the presence of all of those 4-point criteria. If they are all present, go ahead and do a test buy, but not now. Okay, next we have Semirara. Semirara is bearish in the short term and long term scale on the daily, and I suspect it's the same thing for on the weekly, and that's right. On the monthly, it's the same. So bearish on the daily, weekly, and monthly. On the daily, back on the daily chart, MACD is already moving below the signal line, and sellers are in control. Support is at 19.7, resistance is at 24.5. Foreign investors are, okay, here's the irony. Here's the irony of it all. Foreign investors are net buyers for 2019 year to date, and they have started accumulating SCC since the third week of March, and their appetite to accumulate on SCC intensified uh, in the second week of May. They have lain low in registering net foreign buying days on SCC in the last week of May, however. So let's see if they have gotten tired of buying SCC. Let's see in the coming days of June, in the next few days of June. But for now, I don't suggest buying SCC. I don't suggest adding this in your long-term portfolio. Not now. Not now. There are no data-driven reasons to enter a new position or to even not even to top up on SCC. Okay, next. Another banking company, Security Bank. Security Bank is bullish in the long term but bearish in the short term on the daily chart. Let's see if that will change on the weekly. Oh yeah, it did for the worst. It's bearish in the short term and long term scale on the weekly. Will we see the same on the monthly? Same as the weekly. It's different. On the monthly, it's bullish, still bullish in the short term and in the long term scale on the monthly chart. So let me tell you later what's my overall sentiment. So going back to the daily chart, MACD is already downward sloping. One more red candlestick and we will be seeing a death cross below the signal line on the MACD chart. RSI is in the neutral level. On the DMI, it shows here that the sellers have already taken control. However, the downward momentum is still not very strong. Support level is at 160, resistance is at 185. On the daily chart, my estimate tells me that once the price once the price breaks below 170, that it will be more likely for the price to test the previous to test the current support at 160. So this is the protective fence or protecting fence, the 170 level. So my overall sentiment on Security Bank is don't enter a new position yet. If you have it, hold your position if the price is still moving above your trailing stop loss, but do not average down yet. Don't average down yet. Okay? We have to wait. You have to wait because there might not be a good reason. There may not be a good reason for you to top up. So don't top up yet. And don't enter a new position also. Okay, next we have SM. We're down to 5 stocks. SM is bullish in the short term and long term scales on the daily chart. Now on the weekly, let's take a look. On the weekly, it's also bullish in both the time horizons, and on the monthly, it's also bullish both in the short term and long term scales. Going back to the daily chart, MACD maintains its bullishness above the signal line, and RSI is still quite distant from the classical overbought level. The situation is in favor of the buyers, but um, we want to see the price moving above 970 for us to see SM having a very strong upward momentum category or level. So support is at 834, resistance is at 1016 pesos per share. Okay, so I'm stretching the chart so you can see my basis for that. Okay, it's a good thing that this is recorded in the video format and not in an audio format, and that helps me also teach you how to plot support and resistance levels depending on the amount of data that is considered when you are plotting your support and resistance levels. So going back to my overall sentiment, you have a data-driven reason to top up and to enter a new position on SM. Okay, next we have SMC. SMC is bullish in the short-term and long-term scales on the daily chart. On the weekly, it's also bullish in both the time horizons. On the monthly, let's see, it's still loading. Yes, it's still bullish. In fact, on the monthly chart, I'm seeing a perfect bullish alignment of the simple moving averages, just like how they are perfectly aligned in a bullish fashion on the daily chart. Despite this a bullish perfect alignment, RSI is still relatively distant from its classical overbought level. So it's a good sign. It's a good sign, especially for those of you who may already have SMC in your long-term portfolio. That means there's more room for SMC to revisit its previous high at 195.9. So buyers are in control, but the upward momentum is still not yet very strong. I think we will only go back to that very strong category or level once the price touches 195 or higher. Support is at 179. For the resistance, we have to check the 61.8% up Fibonacci extension, and that is at 229 pesos per share. MACD is it already registered a golden cross above the signal line on the daily chart. So foreign investors, let's check. Foreign investors for 2019 year to date are they net buyers or net sellers? They are net buyers, courtesy of this 633 million pesos worth of net foreign buying last March 15. Okay, without this, by the way, without this, I would say I am seeing a neutral sentiment among the foreign investors, but because of this uh, gigantic net foreign buying last March 15, I would say that foreign investors are net buyers on SMC for 2019 year to date. So still you have a data-driven reason to enter a new position or to top up on your current share. You can average down for SMC. Okay, next we have SMPH. SMPH is bullish. Um, let's consider that. It's still bullish in the short term and long term scale on the daily chart. Now on the weekly, it's the same thing, bullish in both the time scales on the weekly chart, and on the monthly it just mirrors the same sentiment, still bullish on the monthly. Going back to the daily chart, MACD is still moving above the signal line, although it seems to be, no, not it seems to be, but it's really downward sloping already because of that tall red candlestick last Tuesday. Nonetheless, the volume last Tuesday was about 50% of the volume that it registered last Monday. So I'm personally not alarmed by the red candlestick last Tuesday, given that relatively smaller volume compared to the volume last Monday. Buyers are still in control. Okay, they're still in control. RSI is still in a neutral level. Foreign investors, um, foreign investors are still net buyers for 2019 year to date. However, they have started to change their mood beginning the first week of May. That's the time when they have started to register consistent net foreign selling days. I think if foreign investors will register 1 or 2 more weeks of continuous net foreign selling days, that will change their year-to-date sentiment into a bearish one, from bullish to bearish. But for now, if you have had SMPH, hold your position, don't top up yet, and do not enter a new position yet. Okay, don't top up, don't enter a new position. If you already have it, hold your position, of course, provided it's still moving above your trailing stop loss. Okay, next, PLDT. PLDT is bearish in the short term and long term scales on the daily chart. On the weekly, it's bearish also. On the monthly, it's all the more bearish. Okay, so overall, PLDT is bearish. This is what I mentioned a while back when I was discussing Globe. Foreign investors registered a net foreign selling worth 438 million pesos. Okay, this was not about an ex-dividend date. It's just that they sold PLDT. Okay, now that's a huge blow on the net foreign trade histogram of PLDT. That's why for 2019 year to date, I think they are still a neutral. Uh, if this nearly half a billion peso net foreign selling did not happen last Tuesday, I would say that foreign investors are still bearish, or bullish rather, on PLDT. But because of this huge net foreign selling last Tuesday, I think foreign investors are they have a neutral stance on PLDT for 2019 year to date. But if this huge net foreign selling last Tuesday uh, will be succeeded by, or will be followed by uh, more net foreign selling days, then I think that will officially change the stance of the foreign investors from neutral to officially bearish for PLDT for year to date. Okay, so here's my advice. If you have had PLDT, hold your position if it's still moving above the 10 SMA. Oh no, if it's still moving above your trailing stop loss, but don't average down. Don't average down. And if you think that PLDT is already cheap right now, it could get cheaper. It could get cheaper. So don't enter a new position yet. Okay? There's a formation of a switch in uh, direction. See, take a look at the DMI histogram. The positive and the negative DMIs are about to interchange or change positions. So when that happens, PLDT might inch closer to its current support at 1027 and moves away from its resistance area at 1443. Okay, let me stretch the chart so you can see it. So you can see the chart just like how I see it. Okay. Okay, last stock in the list. What was the last stock in the list? We have URC. URC is bullish in the short term and long term scales on the daily chart, and by the looks of it, I think it's the same on the weekly. Yes, it is. And on the monthly, it's also bullish. Okay, I just want to add on the daily chart that on the daily chart I'm already seeing a perfect bullish alignment among its three SMAs, and MACD is still moving above the signal line. RSI is there's still more room for it to uh, test the possibility of breaking above the resistance at 173. That's the resistance level, 173. Support is at 112. So let me stretch the chart so you can see why the support and resistance levels are that distant. Okay, now you see it. Buyers are in control. Buyers are in control. Foreign investors are still net buyers for 2019 year to date. However, foreign fundies have started selling in a semi-consistent fashion since the third week of May. So if this selling appetite will continue for weeks, that will change the sentiment of foreign investors for year to date from bullish to bearish. But for now, they are still bullish on URC for 2019 year to date. I would say you still have a data-driven reason to either top up or enter a new position on URC. But I suggest that you monitor first if it can break out, if it can break above URC with a high volume and with support coming from the foreign fundies. Because if there's a high volume with support from the foreign fundies, once it breaks above 173, then it's all the more then that you will have a data-driven reason to have a high conviction trade to to buy on breakout, to enter a new position by buying on breakout. Only if those signs are present once it breaks above 173, of course. Okay, but as early as now, you already have a data-driven reason to top up or to enter a new position. Okay, finally, I don't know if we are already past the 60-minute mark on this video, but finally, thankfully, um, I was able to finish the video with still with voice. Okay, so this is in this video you've heard my analysis, my sentiment, and my interpretation and my pieces of advice for long-term investing purposes. Now, if you have some questions or follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to ask inside our private clients forum. Again, my name is JC De Guzman. Have an independent, a responsible, and a profitable um, trading day for the rest of the week. Bye for now.